All right, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. This is John from Sendbird. Today we have Praful from Rally Health and Monica from Workday. Before we start, we'd love to do a quick round of introduction. Monica, would you like to go first?
Yeah, myself, Monica Bajaj. I'm a Senior Director of Engineering at Workday. I guess like all of you or most of you might be familiar with Workday. Workday is a cloud-based solution in human capital management space, and a lot of companies use Workday for their recruiting, hiring, learning, a lot of best practices. Yeah.
Great. And Praful?
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Praful. I'm a VP of Engineering here at Rally Health. I'm sure most haven't heard about Rally Health. We're a digital health company based here in the Bay Area and in other locations. And our mission for the last 5 years since we've been around has been to put health in the hands of the individual. So we've been working towards moving a lot of the in-person healthcare experiences online, and as we look at the pandemic and all, more relevant than ever before.
Yes, absolutely, especially in the last year or so, must have been one of the most critically important infrastructure for, I guess, the humanity as a whole. So just to introduce myself to everyone here, I'm John, founder and CEO of Sendbird. We're the world's #1 chat API. Today we power over 130 million people who have conversations through our platform every month. We power apps like Reddit, fantasy sports, a lot of dating apps, food delivery, telemedicine, and so forth, to really power the communication for everyone in the digital world. So today our topic is to really talk about how to build teams in a remote way. A lot of lessons we have probably learned in the last year, but also what are some of the tips for the engineering leaders to not just build and hire, but also retain those folks moving forward. So let us start by talking hopefully a little bit about some of the lessons we learned last year when it comes to recruiting and building teams. And I'm sure we've hired people in distributed or remote fashion, but if you like to share some of the lessons, good and the bad lessons that we learned in the last year, I'd love to kind of hear from you guys. So we'll start with Monica.
Sure. So when it comes to recruiting, I would say I myself was recruited during COVID times. So I can give my example. And I also had an opportunity to hire a few people in my team, and it has been interesting learning. What key takeaways and top lessons I have, not just in 2020, but in general, is whenever you hire, you need to look forward long-term and not look for short-term goals of your team, because you may not have the full vision for like few years, but at least you need to start looking from that so that you hire people who are creative, who are persuasive, adaptable, and also ready to collaborate when the change is needed. So that's really important. Apart from, of course, your technical requirements are there. And I'm not bringing in a culture fit word here because I feel like culture fit goes from both the sides. The employee, the candidate looks whether the company is right for them, and the company looks. So it is already gelled in the interview process. But the big difference that happened in 2020 was accessibility to a larger pool for specific roles and companies. Earlier, it was very much focused locally, and now the doors have opened. The companies have realized like they have much more pool to play with and hire the right skill set.
And before we move on to Praful, just to share a little bit of context for the audience, is Workday have gone fully remote? Is it hybrid? Like, what does the setup look like for the engineering team?
So Workday is right now, we are working on the future of work policies, but it's more around, depends from company to company. There are people who, we have people who are remote, and we have people who are working, in the offices. So it all depends. Being a global company, it is important to see what works best in terms of company fit. But to answer your question, yes, it is not fully remote like any other, there are a lot of companies who have called out like they will be fully remote. Workday will not be.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And Praful?
Yeah, so to add to Monica's thoughts, a couple of points. So to set the context, like Rally Health, we've grown a lot. We are a growth company. We've doubled in the last 3 years. So recruiting is key to our success as we look at future growth. So we care a lot about how COVID and the pandemic has impacted recruiting and the policies as well. We are based in 4 locations, and prior to the pandemic, we completely wanted to hire only in office locations. We didn't, except for truly exceptions, we won't hire someone outside of our office locations because we felt that everyone in the office and aligned to a location makes a big difference and helps us preserve our culture, especially for growth companies. When you go from 100 to 1,000 or larger, one of the key concerns of the founders or anyone is like, are we going to lose the culture, the values that we had? So having that access to each person to the office location just felt strong. We felt strongly about it. But with 2020, like all of us have come to the realization that on one hand, people are effective working remotely. Like that's been a learning. I'm sure many have felt the same way. So similar to other companies, we have opened up our channels to hire, so to speak. So we are looking to hire people who are remote as well. Not completely, again, trying to find a middle ground where putting some percentage allocation, let's say, like, so if you're looking to hire 100, let's say 20 to 25% completely remote is okay. And having still a major chunk around our office locations. So that's one aspect. Another point I would hit is just purely in terms of interview process as well, because that was another thing we cared about, because I think like most, we held them on sites. We would fly in candidates or whatever. So that doesn't happen anymore. All of the interviews are virtual interviews. So we do care a lot about making that experience as smooth as possible. To be honest, it's been a loss more on the candidate side of things than the employer, because the candidates, especially for not the household name companies, they like the experience of someone coming into the office and they would get the vibes and like what the culture is. So I'm sure the candidates are missing out on that part of the experience. So we have to kind of put some emphasis around expanding on the culture and how we operate as a team as we work through the interview slots, and especially the culture slot, like that takes a different meaning for us.
Yeah, that's a great context, and just to also share a little bit about our situation. So we have roughly 250 people across the world, and about half is in the R&D, and we have a majority of our engineering headcount here in US as well as South Korea. And then the hiring culture is quite different. So we're seeing a lot of people kind of applying for remote positions. So we have also kind of took a little bit of the hybrid approach. We're hiring kind of people around the hub, some of these R&D hubs, but also open to hiring some of the for the remote positions as well. Now, we touched on a lot of important topics here in this answer, but just to focusing a little bit on the recruiting portion moving forward, like how are you thinking about, let's say, a compensation for the position you're hiring remotely? How does that work? Is it by geo? Like, what are some of the approaches you're taking at your current company? So let's start with Praful.
Yeah, so for us, we are located across 4 locations here in the US. So our compensation team, which works closely with the recruiting team, we have models in terms of each geographic location and what the ranges are. So when a package is prepared, like we do take into account the geographic location. So the fact that we are expanding, again, we are still within the US, so the models are available across all the major cities. So I'm sure that will continue to apply. Having said that, for the existing employees who are choosing to move to a new location from where they originally were hired into, we've kept it simple. We're not doing any changes to their existing compensations and all that stuff. Like we're just going with what's right now, or what they have right now. But again, having said that, like as we look into the future and future comp evaluations tied to reviews and such, I'm sure like there'll be some factors that will come into play. But we've kept it simple as a smaller size company relatively. Like we haven't made it as complex for us at the moment. Yeah.
And would you also be able to touch a little bit on the stock option side? Like what's your approach around equity related to remote hires as well?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a complete package. Like people are eligible, anyone hired, any location they're hired for, like your usual base, equity, all that stuff. So the total package, I mean, it takes into account, as I said, the geographic factors. Yeah.
The equity is also impacted by geography.
Yep. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Monica?
Yeah, same what Praful mentioned. basically there is no difference. We want to make sure like the employee experience stays uniform, whether it is on site or remote, doesn't matter. And as you see, like the recruiting has pretty much become digital at this point in time, and people are able to produce. So looking at the expectations, like any other role, what the role demands, what the location is, our comp team works very closely because Workday is a pretty global company, and we have our offices outside US as well. So that's where the comp team comes into play, and they put together the package. It is a very well-oiled, I would say, machine which takes care of everything, and the package definitely covers the base, the equity, and other elements of it. So there is no difference. We don't treat separately because so far, I have been there for close to a year now, or a little less than a year. I can tell you the company is very, very employee focused, and they want to make sure that they are doing the right thing for existing employees, for upcoming employees, and making that experience the best of the breed.
Yeah. I guess again, one follow-up question to that is like in terms of equity package as well, is it also by geo, or do you have like one universal?
Yes, it is. Everything is by geo because it is part of the package. It's not considered separately.
And I know we have time slotted for the audience, but actually there's one relevant question right now by Julius. How do you keep your engineer from finding offers from big tech too attractive when you're kind of offering these things? So I'd love to kind of hear from you. How do you think about differentiating your package compared to, let's say, whatever the big 5 companies, tech companies out there?
Sure, I can take a stab on that. So basically, every company works or provides the best what is best for them, right? In terms of making sure how they are competing in that space. And every company cannot be comparing with every other company because it's not possible. The other thing to remember is the companies tend to revise their comp planning, adjusting with the market every year. That's the whole exercise. So they have to do it, otherwise they cannot stay current. And that's where, most of the times, if companies are not focused on that comp planning exercise, adjusting with the market, how the market is taking up or how the other companies are paying and how the economy is changing, the cost of living, all those factors go in order to revise that. So that is a regular exercise at by the comp team. And they share with all the hiring managers like, hey, now you have to hire this role. This is the new comp, or this is the update. Keep that in mind. Regarding when you said like how to hold, I would say like nobody can hold anybody from going from one place to another place. People make their own decisions. It's not just sometimes the financial package only. There are other factors also where people decide to move from one place to another place. But every company has to do what the best thing is for them, and employee needs to see like, does this work for them?
Yeah. Praful, would you like to?
Yeah, I would say like if anything, it's challenging for companies that are smaller in size, especially, even pre-COVID, like we were in a very competitive hiring environment. So really for companies that aren't the big household names, for us, it's not just the comp, but really presenting a very compelling vision and mission statement that a candidate feels truly passionate about. Like that, in my opinion, is what can be the biggest driving factor. Outside, obviously, compensation is a practical concern, so you have to be competitive. But it's not about just trying to beat the highest bidder out there or the highest number out there. It's truly about what your company's mission is, and if a candidate truly feels that that's the place where they want to invest their energy and truly find the purpose of their work and the impact, then that's really what allows us to hire candidates high quality that otherwise other high-tech companies are also after. So
to add one more thing to that is the culture of the company makes a huge impact. You like the work, the culture, the people, and money is one part of it, but there are other elements also which should be considered.
Yeah. Actually, there's another kind of question that's super relevant to this. By the way, I'm hearing a little bit of thudding noise in the background, so I don't know where is it coming from, but I'd love to kind of make sure that we're cognizant of that and mute between answers. But one question from the audience, Irina asked, what are some ways candidate could actually use to evaluate the culture of the company they're considering joining? But this is actually a two-part question. How can the company show their culture, what it's like to work in this kind of remote recruiting environment? Because it's really hard to tell because you can't really like go to the office and visit and kind of feel that energy or whatnot. So how do you, as a company, can you convey that culture and all those things to the candidate? And also from the candidate perspective, how can they get the sense? How can they evaluate in this kind of remote recruiting environment? So let's this time start with Praful.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately it's all virtual. It's all like using the opportunity to communicate in words, like try to paint a picture, right? What a day in a life is for an engineer, or how they're collaborating or like working with either within their teams or others, basically. So it's all about trying to paint a picture in words, essentially. And then again, like giving them all the access to information they need, even talking to potential teammates or other engineers inside the company. So they have more information as much as possible to gauge how to evaluate like the culture and such about the company. Yeah, that's a big constraint, which I kind of highlighted. There's no easy workarounds, unfortunately. I don't have a solution, but it's all like just painting a picture virtually. Yeah.
Right. I can add a little because I was hired virtually, and I have not visited Workday offices yet, and I hired people also virtually. So the way I have been able to do this is by telling my own story, like what I have learned being virtual. Building relationships over Zoom is not easy. So there is a constant effort, and knowing people, knowing the right people. So I would say like sharing that story has really helped people. And then of course, when they come on board, helping them through that journey as a hiring manager is really, really critical. Basically, walking them through the whole experience, the onboarding experience before they get into office, or before they start working, even virtually, is really critical.
Yeah, I guess just to add a little bit from our perspective too, this really kind of levels the playing field for a lot of startups, because before, when a candidate goes to whatever big company, they get infinite food, infinite whatever swags, whereas now it's kind of like really kind of similar. You're just connecting with someone else virtually. So whether you work at one of those big tech companies or a startup, the interview process at least initially feels very similar in a way. So now the only real differentiation we can do is, to Monica's point, is to storytell. What is our mission and how do we work? And also kind of weave that into, say, core values. How does that mission connect with the core values? And hopefully the candidates can kind of see the patterns of those core values throughout the rest of the interview process, so they can kind of get a sense of that. And I think from the candidate's perspective too, now people have to just rely a lot more on online resources, whether it be Glassdoor, blogs, content, and just like hearing through the reference checks and whatnot of people who are actually currently working at those companies. So I think for the candidates too, now it's less about physical kind of experience, but it's just doing more research behind the scene to learn as much as about the company as possible. So I think it just takes a lot more considerable effort on both sides to kind of convey that culture and what it feels like to be working together. So,
yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on preparing the onboarding document so that they can consume it at their own pace. Unlike, in other times when people were in person, they could go to the cube or, office and ask people. So do as much as you can.
Yeah, great. And we could talk about recruiting a lot more, but I also do want to touch a little bit on the engagement and retention of the engineers, especially it's a lot easier for anyone to kind of look for new opportunities these days, given that we just have to simply click a button and be able to connect with another company. So how do you kind of keep your engagement and the retention of your engineers or engineering managers? And this time we'll start with Monica.
I would say just one word: connect, connect, and connect. Basically over-communicate, trickle down the information from all sources wherever you are, and encourage your team members who are representing the team across different meetings to follow the same behavior, because it is very easy to lose that piece of information and just be with them. The more they communicate on either Slack or whatever is the best mode of communication, but sharing that information is really important because that gives an aspect to the entire organization at multiple levels that the leaders are transparent, they want to over communicate, and that's really important. The second thing is the timely feedback and encouraging, celebrating their achievements in a timely fashion virtually has become, more than ever, making sure like we don't miss those opportunities of celebrating those and acknowledging people. And then, of course, respect and trust. That goes beyond saying it's not just because being virtual, it has to be there, whether you were like before 2020 or any time. So that really happens. One thing which really helped me was because I was virtually onboarded, there was no way for me to check how am I doing. So after 3 months, I ran a 360 on myself anonymously just to get a pulse check, like how am I doing, how my org perceives me, and what can I do better? Because obviously there is a lot of burden on your shoulders as a leader to run your organization. So that was really helpful, and presenting that data back to the team that, hey, these are the things which were well, these are the things where I need help. So taking some action items of that was really, really encouraging.
That's a great idea because people don't have to wait until company provides, let's say, hey, this performance review season, let's say 360. Actually being able to go out to your team and proactively asking for those feedback as a leader, I think that's going to be very, very powerful, and also hopefully create a lot of trust from the team and that increased engagement onto your profile.
Sorry, I was going to say, I just had a couple of quick points. I think when it comes to retention, I mean, the key principles are still the same, having a compelling vision and mission. And the other point I will hit upon is growth opportunities for individuals. Monica already spoke about communication. The only thing I would add to it is, like, for us as like managers or leaders, our communication has to be more crisper and better. We have to be better at it, because now you're not in a room where someone can raise their hand and ask questions, because people tend to be a little bit shy in virtual channels. So you have to put extra effort on your communications and making it crisp, to the point, and easy to follow along, because now you don't have that follow-up that you can otherwise have in person. The point about growth opportunities, because all of the engineers on our teams or whoever it is, right, they're looking for growth. And what typically we'll find is that there are individuals who are good at seeking new opportunities, but then there are many who are not. And now all of them are in their houses by themselves. So they're further probably not able to identify what the growth opportunities are going to be for them outside of their teams, because within their teams, everyone is aware what's happening, but it's what's happening outside that's not happening, that's not available to them. So to that effect, we've employed a couple of things to make it better for people, especially now that we are all remote. So one is adopting a framework around company or engineering goals that's easy to look up and be able to kind of see what are the different initiatives or activities that are being happening to impact those company or engineering goals. So that if someone is interested, they know who to go look up and talk about, like, what's happening in that and how they can contribute. And by similar measure, in engineering, we also adopted these what we call communities of practice. So this is like around specific areas. People have built these guilds or groups where they come together and talk about some of the latest tech and all that stuff. So these are really opportunities that we have to create, because again, as I said, within teams, everyone knows what's happening, but it's the opportunities outside that we just have to make it more accessible to individuals, so they know, like, where they can contribute beyond what they're doing on a daily basis. So.
Awesome. I was listening to the previous session, and one of the speakers, I believe, mentioned the Daniel Pink's book about Drive, the intrinsic motivation framework. I also saw the recent update to that. They added R to it, so relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And what happens, especially in this remote environment, is people can be focused on the work and work alone. But the relatedness, people build relationship in different ways. Now, when we're used to be back in the office, we have different opportunities kind of spontaneously build relationship by water cooler conversations, having lunch together. But now it has to be a lot more intentional these days. So I think creating that almost like a portfolio or casting a wider net of expanding the probability of where people can kind of cling onto, like whether it be sharing, talking about a pet, or having those virtual quarantinis, I think it's just making sure the company systematically cast a wider net so that people can build relationship. The relatedness portion of intrinsic motivation will hopefully help people stay more engaged and retain better. And I do want to kind of focus towards one of those questions from the audience. Richard asked, how do you weigh compensation versus company culture as factors in retaining talent? Because again, it's so easy for any candidate to hop on a call, get a better offer. Hey, I got 20K or whatever more from this another company. So it becomes a little bit more, could be mercenary, transactional. So how do you kind of like weigh, which mechanism do you use when those kind of situations happen? Like how do you retain those employees in those kind of tricky situations when people is already kind of looking for other opportunities? This time we'll go back to you, Praful.
Yeah, I mean, again, each individual, like you have to look at you have to understand the individual and their motivations and what they're looking for. It's truly trying to understand that person and what goes into their decision making. And then from there, it's truly about like what your company has to offer that will allow them to be successful or be able to accomplish what they're looking for. And I think I mentioned already, like when it comes to recruiting or any individual, even people who are already within your company, it's comp is one factor, but then it's truly about like the purpose of your company, right? And is that something that the person feels aligned with and feels like they can make a bigger impact and stronger contribution? And obviously weighing in options around like the people that they work with or get an opportunity to work with, growth opportunity. It's not about a point in time, what role you're going to be at, but like 2 to 5 year time frame. What is it that you are able to offer them in that timeline versus some other opportunity? So it's a mix of factors, and you just have to paint a picture that kind of hopefully appeals to the candidate and they're able to properly weigh in their options. And at the end of it, if it makes sense to go with a higher comp, whatever it is, then it's good for them. Like we should obviously, we want to hold on to everyone, but if it's best for their career, then we need to acknowledge and yeah, you put in your best effort there.
Great. Monica?
Yeah, I agree with Praful. As I said, right, everybody has to make the decision what works the best for them. As a hiring manager or as a leader of any organization, what you can offer is you can show the opportunities. You can also check the pulse, what excites that individual, and maybe able to create those opportunities. Because a lot of times for some people, I mean, if you look at the comp, right? I mean, you get every 2 weeks, but the work which you do is due every day. And, you pretty much spend so many hours of your day and you want to see like, what was my work impactful? So it's really important what matters the most for people. And I'm not saying like by no way, like, comp is not important. It's a very, very important part of our, our daily lives. But at the same time, you can create opportunities and understand. That's why understanding your employee is really, really important in terms of like, what energizes them, what keeps them up. And the more you connect, the more you understand. So you keep in mind, and I would encourage on the employee side also to bring those opportunities and have those conversations with your managers.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we only have like a couple minutes left, so probably we'll start wrapping things up and take one more final question from the audience. This is interesting, controversial question, not necessarily question being controversial, but interesting topic. If you're willing to have, let's say, 25% being remote, why limit it at all? How does that benefit the employee side of things? How does it benefit the company side of things? Love to kind of hear your thoughts there. Do you have anything you want to share, Monica?
So let me understand the question. If you're willing to have 25% remote, why limit it at all? Yeah. So is the question...
I know more directly to our Praful, but I think it's relevant to everyone. So why not just go all remote?
All remote.
What's the benefit?
Yeah. So I can share my view is having, in-person connections, knowing people more than just your peers is really, really important. And people may be remote, but at least build those in-person connections either by travel and also depends on their job, right? Sometimes the job is okay, to be remote, and sometimes the job needs to be in person. So I would go with that. And every company does keep in mind the core values, and the culture of the company decides that factor as well. Because a lot of times when companies go fully remote, there is a chance that they want to make sure their culture doesn't get diluted, and that's really, really the soul of the company, I would say. So it's really important to keep that factor in mind, and every company makes that call based on that.
Yeah.
And I would just add to Jake's question, like, it's just being practical. Like, I know we've had data from the last 1 year. Is that sufficient? I don't think so. Like, so to keep your options open, like, you're not going all in, because to be honest, like, going all in, like remote and then going back is a harder thing to do than going incrementally in one direction. So maybe we may end up there, maybe 6 months from now, a year from now. It's just about like just having additional data before you truly commit to it. And at least from our perspective, we're not ready to commit yet. So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, well, everyone. I know we're at time, so thank you, everyone, for doing this. I really learned a lot from our conversation today, and hopefully the audience also enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully took something with us that we can actually apply at our daily jobs. So again, really excited and really appreciate all of your time today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.